Send me the other ones too.
Okay, I'll send you the link when I get done here. I'll try
Yeah,
to send it over.
that's what's up. So I had a very interesting weekend.
Okay.
I was arrested.
Oh no, what happened?
I was in jail. Yeah, yeah. So I ran a stop sign and I got pulled over for that. And the officer comes to the window, lets me know, hey, you ran a stop sign over on whatever license, registrations, proof of insurance, all that stuff. I give him my license, my insurance, can't find my registration. So I, hand him everything. Again, keep your arms where you can, they can see you. You have to just put your arms like kind of like this. But make sure, and this was what, 10 o'clock in the morning
Right.
this happened.
Right.
So the guy, he leaves, he said, listen, if I don't find anything, I'll just come back with a warning, let you go. Okay, cool. This thing is taking a whole lot longer than expected.
Hmm.
But I'm like, I do know that they use one system to look up a bunch of different people. So if there's a bunch of st- cops looking people up, it's going to take longer. So I figured it's just taking longer. I look to my, right now in my car, I know I forget, right, that I have my CCW. I don't forget that part,
Yeah.
but I forget that I have my gun
Uh-oh.
not on my person, the door. Usually I have it on me. If I have it on me, I always remember that. But this time I didn't remember because it was inside of my door,
Right.
holstered and everything. He comes back. He's like, hey, I need you to step out of the car. I'm like, okay, what's going on? He said, there's a warrant for your arrest. I'm like, me? He said, yeah, back in 2018, you apparently parked in a handicap parking and you didn't show up for court. I'm like, okay. As I'm getting out of the car, I'm like, hey, and I hand him my CCW permit. I'm like, hey, I have a CCW, but I also have a firearm in my car.
Right.
He said, well, you're supposed to tell me that right when I walk up to the window. I'm like, man, I didn't even think about it whatsoever because it's not on me.
Right.
It's in my car. So
Is it built?
anyway, so I have an outstanding warrant. So I get arrested or whatever. They book my car. This is Saturday morning, right? I look at the fine. The fine is $50. And I'm like, it's funny because I'm driving a $70,000 car.
Right.
I make almost $20,000 a month. And this is what I'm going to jail for? This? Like, wow. So I go, I don't say anything, whatever. I'm also a type 2 diabetic. So
Right.
they grab my keys or whatever, they open up. I have a pill cap thing in my phone. Matter of fact, I'll show you guys. So this thing right here is a pill dispenser,
Uh,
right? So if you forget your medication, you can take it wherever you are.
right.
So they open it up and they see like a white powder substance in the bottom. This stuff, putting it in something or whatever. And then he comes back around and he's like, well, I'm going to read you your rights because you are under arrest. And I'm just sitting there thinking, like, over a fucking park for. I'm like, wow, this is just so crazy. And he said, you don't have to answer my question, but what's in the pill bottle? I'm like, dude, I'm a type 2 diabetic. That's where I put my medications in. The reason why when you're using your little thing back there, it doesn't come up as blue or whatever the color is because these medications are not illegal.
Right.
So, and he was like, can you prove that? I'm like, yeah, go into my phone, go into my chart. I'm with CHI. Everything that you'll find in that pill bottle, you'll find a prescription for that.
Yeah.
So, like, yeah, I'm like, dude, I'm not a criminal by no means. But it led me to think that these motherfuckers, like, and I'm not saying all of them, But it's like, dude, it's like they would try to put charge after charge after charge
Right.
ever they possibly can. And it hit me because I'm always stating that, dude, I have nothing but respect for cops. But there's certain ones that are just kind of like, bro, I see why people fucking hate y'all.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I see why people hate you.
Well,
You know what
and
I'm saying? I see it. And
right.
again, here's my thing. I don't have anything against people doing their jobs by no means. But it just kind of seemed like one thing after another, after another, after another. And then when I go to the holding or whatever, it's to me that's just humiliating.
It is.
All the stuff that they put you through, just so you can bond out, right? And while I'm sitting in there, the correction officer guy was like, he read the charge and they read the thing with the gun thing because now it's a gun thing too now
Yeah.
because I didn't disclose that I have had a gun in my car or whatever. Which, and again, I do get that because they're in fear of their lives and they want to know. But I also had a knife too, so I didn't have direct access to it, but I had enough access to it. So the correction guy, when I get to the jail, reads the stuff off and he's looking at it, and he's like, man, he could have just gave you a warning and just told you to go get this thing knocked out on Monday. Kind
Right.
of like a fix-it ticket. And if you didn't do it, then they would come to you. But he's like, dude, he didn't have to arrest you for this. For a $50 fine.
Yeah, that was his choice.
Oh, so I'm like, all right, cool. So he's like, and I kept asking, like, how do I bond myself out? And he's like, once all the paperwork's done and we run you through the system, then we'll be able to, get your bail and this and the other. Now remember, it's only $50.
Right.
So I get arrested at like 10 something. I'm in jail by 11. I'm in there for 4 hours, all together. And here's the thing. Now because of the gun thing,
Mm-hmm.
the bond went from $50 to 1,050. I'm like, dude, the gun is legal. It's in my name. I have it. He's like, nope, doesn't matter. You still supposed to tell him as soon as you come. I'm like, dude, what the fuck? I can understand if the gun was illegal, if I wasn't supposed to have it, if,
Right.
if, if there's nothing linking me to this firearm, I would understand. And again, I know that cops would be like, well, our lives are always in danger. Pick a different fucking career.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm just saying, like, what? Like all of that. And here's a boot, right? So I got the money. I had the money to bail myself out.
Right.
Like it's 1,050. Cool, not a problem. I got that. Can I just use my card, swipe me out? Nope. We only take they only take cash. Like who walks around with cash?
With $1,000 cash.
It's like most people don't.
Right.
So I'm like, all right, cool. He's like, well, we got an ATM machine, but it only lets you take out $200 at a time. So you have to take out 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. Right?
Right.
Now, here's the thing. Most debit cards will cap you out at a
Right.
certain amount. And if they see that you're in one place and you just keep swiping out to take cash, especially so much, they'll block your card.
Yeah.
So guess what happens to me while I'm there?
Block.
I'm only able to take out $400 and my card stopped working. I got the money. Now, luckily for me, I have different places that I'll keep certain amounts of money or whatever, right? On this, at this particular time, something told me I had a few $1,000s sitting at my house in my safe before I take it to the bank because I save, and then take it, save a little bit, take it. So I'm like, okay. So I call my friend, my next door neighbor, and thank God, best friend as well. I call her. I'm like, hey, I need $652 for the rest. She's like, I ain't got it. I'm like, okay. So I signed this page to relinquish my items to her, right?
Mhm.
Now, where I live is a government facility for the most part, right?
Yeah.
So I do not have a regular key to get into my house because I don't need one.
Right.
So my front door was still locked. My garage door is closed. I'm like, and they just towed my car. So I'm like, dude, how is she gonna get in my house? And then it was her thinking, not mine. I need his phone because I have in my phone this thing called My Queue that allows me to open my garage door wherever I am.
Right.
So I can open it remotely, right? So she goes in, I have to explain to her how to get into my safe.
Get into it. Right.
I have the key, have two separate keys that unlock different things in different places in my house. So I have to run that by her, explain it, have her tell me back. And then it takes her another hour and a half to go to my house, find both keys, go into my safe, pull out the money, take it down just to bail me out. And I'm sitting there thinking, I can see why people spend the whole entire weekend in jail.
Yeah.
I can see why if you ain't got no money, bro, I can only imagine if I worked a traditional job,
Oh yeah.
I would have lost my job. You
Well,
know what I'm saying? So like, and I'm just sitting there, I was just sitting there just kind of dumbfounded, like, man, this is what people go through on a daily basis.
they tell you that, oh, what you gotta do is do this to extract yourself and get out and bond out or whatever, but then they make it damn near impossible. Because here's the
Right.
other thing: if you was carrying $1,000 around in your pocket, then that becomes was it asset forfeiture or whatever, and they can forfeit it and hold it until they finish their investigation or whatever they're
That part,
investigating. You might
that
never
part.
see that money again. And now, if that was your last $1,000, you out $1,000.
You know what I'm
So
saying? Well, only if you cannot show and prove where you got it from. Now, the fun thing is that there's one particular bank that I go to, so they could try that all day long. Not only do I have an attorney, but I'll fight that, beat that, and get my money back.
right.
But still, that civil forfeiture, that's real.
Mhm.
They can hold, and again, instead of placing a crime on me, and for people who don't understand what a civil forfeiture is, they're putting a crime against your property.
Mhm.
So they're saying that we may not be able to show and prove that you committed a crime, but because your car was in the vicinity of where drug paraphernalia or drugs are taking, drug dealing is taking place, they can impound and they can take your car.
Right.
If they believe that a drug dealer went to your house and you guys are friends, they can forfeit your house. They have forfeiture blenders, money, cars, property. They can take anything from you,
Right.
anything, and then
And it,
just throw it up under the rug of civil forfeiture. I can't show and prove that he committed a crime, but his property was in the vicinity of a crime being committed.
mhm. It's the craziest thing. Like, there's police departments that's a line item in their budget and how much cash they pulled off of people. And if you're not, if you don't have the resources to fight it, that money ends up just becoming money that they just have.
Yeah.
And God knows where it goes after that point. Craziest thing. They make it
And then-
impossible for you to extract yourself once they get the claws into you. And I saw this uh, as a caseworker. Once the system has those hooks into you, They make it very difficult for you to extract yourself. I used to tell the parents of my kids, my probation kids, I said, you have a legal right to understand what you're agreeing to when you're standing in that courtroom. And they start speaking in this legalese jargon that took them 8 to 10 years to decipher themselves. And then they got you answering yes and no to things you have no idea what you're answering to.
Mm.
But that's how they trap you in there. So if you're ever in there and the attorney is sitting there talking and you don't understand what they're asking you, you have the right to say, can you put that in layman's terms? Tell me what I'm agreeing to before I agree to it. Because I've had kids that ended up copping the stuff that they had no business copping to. I had parents that gave up rights that they shouldn't have given up if they actually knew what they were agreeing to. But
Mm.
they pulled this old trick where it's an old salesman thing. Well, they'll ask a question and start nodding at you, and then you're like, "Oh yeah, yeah." Like it's a mental thing. So they say it, they ask it, and then they'll start nodding at you to give you an affirmative. Okay, it's crazy, bro. So how long did this all take for you to get out of? Like, to get back home?
Well, I finally got home around 4 or 5 altogether.
Wow,
Mm-hmm. 4 or 5. Yep.
it's crazy.
Yep. And again, like I said, man, if I didn't already have the money in general, I'm just sitting there thinking like, damn, look at those people that are in there for $250 and they don't know anybody that got $250.
Hmm.
I basically had to bomb myself out because there wasn't really nobody else around me who got money.
Right.
So I'm in
Well,
there talking to this old dude, 19 years old, and I tell him, I say, even in there, bro, this is what I be trying to tell people. You don't get in life what you want. You get in life exactly what you are. And
right.
even in the motherfucking jails, my dude, I'm sitting in there coaching young men.
Right.
I mean, seriously, I explained it to him. I'm like, bro, let me explain something to you, man. If the people I told him that you are the average of the 5 people that you hang around, and the people that you have in your corner around you, if they don't have enough, I said this to him. I said, most of the people in your corner, they are $1,000 to $2,000 usually where you are sitting.
Hmm.
So if you are sitting at $2,000 in your account, the likelihood of the 5 people around you have 2 to 4,000 or 2 to broke.
Right.
If you're sitting at zero, then most people around you only probably have a couple thousand and that's it, right?
Hmm.
I said, listen, man, beef your people up around you. You have to. And this is one of the things that I'm talking about. The other side of the intention is integrity, to have integrity about yourself, right?
Hmm.
But the other part of that is one side is principle, but then the other side of that is preparation. Majority of us don't prepare for anything.
Right.
And that's the reason why we're unprepared for everything.
Right.
I like knowing that if this happens, I have this to fall back on. If that happens, I have this to fall back on. And just having people around that if I'm ever in a situation, I can make that phone call.
Right.
And this young man, he's gonna sit in jail for a little bit, his corner, to be able to help him out. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And talking to him, he's like, "Nah, this is my second time here." He's like, "What about you?" I'm like, "Man, I don't make it a habit of going to jail. It's not really my thing.
Hmm.
You know, this ain't here. If I'd have known about it, I wouldn't have even been in this situation. You know, literally, I would not have been.
Right.
But it lets me know, like, just how corrupt and just how absent and adolescent minded we are as a people, as a culture, and as a country. You know what I mean? Like, very adolescent. I mean, to that a person can get out of jail because you ain't got the money for it.
Yeah.
Money. So it has nothing to do with the crime.
No.
He paid the ticket. And it's so 10% of 10,000 is 1,000.
Right.
So if 10% is that, I'm paying, $1,000 for this. I'm like, dude, like, what crime did I commit by forgetting to tell this dude I have a gun in my car, which I showed him I have a carrying permit,
Yeah.
not a permit to purchase. That's different. A license to carry in general. And not only do I have it in one state, I have it in 3 states. You know what I'm
It's
saying?
it's all about it, and what you're kind of describing is one. There's a couple of different thoughts. One, this country never fails to punish poverty. I even look at it from the healthcare perspective. Like, if you don't have money, that impacts your health. If you don't have money in the bank, it directly impacts your ability to take care of yourself.
Yeah.
And when you ask about somebody's health, it always ties back to how much money they have. Even the conversation, we've been kind of conditioned, it veers back into, well, I don't have the money and this is going wrong with me, but I don't have the money to go to the doctor. Like, we attribute our overall wellness not only to our physical capabilities, our physical fitness, but also
Mm-hmm.
to how much money it is. There's a sickness in that, because I believe that there's opportunities for everybody, but I also understand that sometimes it does come down to you're just in a bad situation, and you've encountered a series of misfortunes, and so you may not have access to the capital that you had before. But we attribute our wellness to how much money we have in the bank. That's the ongoing punishment of poverty. Two, it's about crime and punishment. But the crazy part is you can get punished before they've even proven that you've committed a crime in a court of law.
Right.
So, what happened was punishment for
Right.
whatever this officer's picadillos are, because he made the call that you deserve to be punished for something that he may or may not punish other people for. Because if it was a matter of he could have just let you off with a warning, that's a choice that he made. And he decided that you needed to be punished, not only for the red light, but because you didn't do the ceremony of announcing that you had a concealed carry. And instead of it being attributed to a regular slip of the mind, they made it something else.
Something else. And again, I'm like, bro, like it'd be one thing if, like I said, and again, I totally, again, like I'm conflicted with it because I do understand, like, they get popped on constantly. But bro, I'm in a $70,000 car.
Yeah.
Bro, what am I do to you? If my hands are up, like I said, if it was on me, I would have remembered that because I would
Yeah.
have felt it on me. But it wasn't on me. It was inside of my door.
Right.
Which, and again, his partner had a camera, so he can show and prove that there was papers and another little book right there. So it wasn't just sitting out in the open. It was behind that. If I would have seen it, I would have told him.
Right.
But I didn't even think about it.
Well,
I mean, at 9 o'clock and 10 o'clock in the morning,
yeah.
going to Walmart. Why I need to go get strapped up to go to Walmart?
Well, the other side is you're already in a traumatic situation. I've been pulled over before. Instantly, I go into panic mode. Like, and I have enough cognitive ability to understand this is what my rights are and stuff like that. But when you're in that situation, one, let's be real. When you're pulled over by the cops, the blue and lights are behind you. You black in this country. The Bill of Rights and all other stuff, those are concepts at that point in time.
Yeah,
They're not
right,
rules for you. They're
right,
concepts. They're
right.
concepts that you can try to cite and try to use to protect you, but realistically they're just concepts because you are still at the mercy of whatever this authority figure has pulled you over is. A lot of black people I know, you're still in full blown panic mode.
Massively.
I don't know if I'm going to survive this encounter. I don't want it to escalate.
Right.
Expecting a level of rationality or calmness or being able to think in a straight line for a regular citizen is in a
Mm.
traumatic situation.
No.
They're like, oh, it's a dangerous situation, and I made the best choice based on what my experience told me. Well, I'm not a police officer. You get pulled over, you're like, holy shit, come on, you know what I'm saying? You got a million things going through your mind, and then, oh, by the way, I do have a weapon in my door. Here's my permit. Well, since you didn't tell me that first, since you couldn't extract
Mm.
and say this thing that you're scripted to say, which is still relatively new, because I'm aware of the concealed carry laws in this state. That shit is still relatively new to most people. We're gonna punish you by charging you an extra $1,000. And that is the conundrum that you're in. And it's like all this stuff that people tell you about, how to keep yourself safe and all that stuff. It sounds great in theory,
In theory,
but
it does.
you're still at the mercy of somebody who a lot of this stuff is up to their interpretation. It's crazy that you get punished for, and it's not even a mistake. Yeah, people run red lights. I've seen people deliberately run red lights. Like, come on. Like, I've seen people literally deliberately run red lights and drive crazy and stuff. You do that accidentally. Okay, there's a fine. There's laws that you get ticket. You can get cited for that. 100% understood. But to go the extra mile, to add the extra layer of punishment on top of it, that's where I go into. So is this about punishment, or is this about rehabilitation and making sure that you comply?
Right,
Like,
that part.
is it a punishment fetish? And that's what I feel like. Sometimes it feels like there's this weird punishment fetish. That's
I like that.
ridiculous.
I'm gonna write that down. Punishment fetish. That's deep. Punishment fetish. Yeah.
And people, I think a lot of times people, there's certain segments of society where that never occurs. I've been in West Omaha, watched a man watch rich dude in big huge pickup truck, in $80,000 pickup truck, cuss the cop out,
Yeah.
cuss him out, call
Yeah.
him all kinds of names and everything else, and didn't even get cited. You got over the warning. That level of that is not that that is so far removed from what my reality is in this state and what your reality is in this state is crazy. So I
Right.
don't know. I got a lot of different conflicting thoughts about that.
Yeah, you know what? And so do I. I gotta find an attorney and try to figure out because it is a charge. It's just like, wow, for fucking forgetting. What the fuck?
Right.
Like, I could totally understand if it was like I said, if the gun was unregistered, the gun had serial number scratch. Again, I totally get that. It was literally a slip of my mind. It wasn't on me. It was in the
Mhm.
car. When if I was that type of guy that had a fucking warrant for parking in
Mhm.
a unregistered place or whatever. When if I was just having that type of morning, I got out and just lit his ass up.
Decided to crash out. You decided that's what the crash out is.
Yeah, and decided to crash out and be done. So again, I like to try to see things from his standpoint as well. And again, this could also be a thing that opens that conversation to kind of like you said, that punishment fetish. And but it also looks into the methods that I teach with the iPad system, which is preparation and holding yourself accountable.
Mhm.
See, accountability isn't one of those things that just sounds good in the moment. It's one of those things that you got to accept that shit, win, lose, or draw.
Right.
Those that balance of the scales behind me says it all. You got to be able to balance that out. You know what I'm saying? Like in general. So again, as much as I know, you had a gun in your car,
Mhm.
and he could feel, hey, you know what? You didn't tell me, so I'm just gonna write that up too.
Mhm.
right? So along with this, you're choosing to. So
Right.
don't tell, you know what I'm saying? So the one thing that me and Matt, we've talked about, Matt and I have talked about this whole thing that, especially in our country, that we have where we say that, well, it's just a job. No, it the job is a job. A
Mhm.
badge is nothing more than a silver piece of metal with some shit stamped on it, right? A job is nothing more than some duties that was given to you by somebody else for pay.
Right.
You're not doing it as a volunteer. Hence, that's the word job. But there's still the human aspect of that.
Right.
Cool, whatever. And again, I never argued, never said anything, kept my composure, kept it simple, kept it quiet.
Mhm.
So I'm saying I could talk to you once we're done with all this, and once I'm out, and I'll go to court and kind of go from there and stuff. But I'm just saying, like, man, like, you still like, man, like, dang, like, really, like,
Right.
all this for $50? Technically, it's not even really that. All this for not for running a stop sign. Accountability, you got to be held accountable. That's, I mean, when if somebody would have came out and I'd have hit them,
Mhm.
you know what I'm saying? Would I still be talking that same shit? Accountability means that you have to keep that same energy when it comes to that positive stuff or
Mhm.
the negative side of it. You got to
Right.
keep that same energy. I mean, that's the shitty thing about being a life coach and philosophers, that you have these diametrically opposing views clashing with each other constantly of who's right, who's wrong. Well, it all depends on which side you feed more.
Right.
You know, like there are times when we were just talking about civil forfeiture, where it allows the government to take stuff from you, right? To charge your property as opposed to charging you.
Right.
Okay, cool. But we talked about the negative side of that. Is there a different positive side to that? Well, what happens if you live inside of a drug infested neighborhood? The police decide to come through and they RICO everything and they take it all. They take everybody's car, they take them houses, they take everything in them, and then
Mhm.
they done wiped out the neighborhood. Now you have a peaceful neighborhood. So a civil forfeiture that bad in that situation? I don't know. I guess it depends on your neighbors.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So I mean, like I said, man, that is the shitty part about holding yourself accountable. I'm just throwing that out there. It's not always gonna be fun. Matter of fact, it's gonna suck.
Mhm.
You know, I mean, it's going to. And but again, I'm alive to be
Right.
able to talk about it. You know what I'm saying? Like I didn't turn up, I didn't do nothing stupid, which I wouldn't have anyway. The man did his job.
Right. And
You
he
know what I
made the
mean?
decisions based on, whatever he's going through. He makes decisions based on his own framework. And if we sat down and interviewed him, he'd probably have an entire um, procedure and rationalization for why he did what he did. But then we do go back to
Oh,
the aspect of sometimes a job is just a job, and you can determine the level of service that you're going to provide at that job if
sure,
it's a
yeah.
public
You
facing
could.
job. Sometimes that part gets lost too, where it's like,
Mm,
would you want somebody to show you a level of kindness based on how how would I want, when I did the case management stuff, how would I want the person that's working with my kid who's already in trouble to behave towards that kid? Do I want somebody that's going to be kind and compassionate and understanding but still holds them accountable? Or do I want somebody that is a punitive jerk? Well,
mm-hmm.
I would want to be treated with some kindness and compassion and humility with some accountability.
Right.
And so that's how I would perceive myself. A lot of America is not really aware of what the process, what you went through. They're not aware. They don't have intimate knowledge of how that entire process goes and what goes into it. So they can't necessarily relate to it.
Right.
They don't understand what it's like, and because they can't place themselves in it, it's that empathy gap, the gap.
Mm,
And I think sometimes we do, collectively as a society and government officials and stuff, I think there's a specific empathy gap when you get so locked into what you're doing that you don't see how what you're doing affects everybody else. Like I look at it like this. So, and you watch where the ripples go. That's what happens when you're making legislation. You put a piece of legislation out there, it's a big stone that goes and creates a lot of ripples. Problem is, you're not looking to see where those ripples hit each other, intersect,
mm,
and what issues that those intersections are bringing. So you get frustrated when people talk about the ripples that you've created and how they've collided with their lives and it's made their lives difficult because in your mind you've created this brilliant piece of legislation that's going to solve all these people's problems. And
right.
it may have solved a third of the people's problems, but there's another third that are impacted by that decision. And I was talking about in the concept of how they allocated money for residential youth care and youth programming and stuff in the state, and how that they also not only budget it but also create the rules that govern that and dictate. Because I was we were arguing because it's like you had a bunch of unfunded mandates for my shelter. Well, you guys need to knock out this wall and put more distance between the washer and dryer. You gonna pay to knock out the wall? Like,
Mm.
where am I gonna do all this stuff? It sounds good on paper, but when you apply these rules, they negatively impact programs that are doing you a tremendous service by actually sheltering these kids that would normally be causing trouble for you. We shelter them, make sure they go to school and they're taking care of their meds and all that other stuff. But now you're making our lives harder because of this unfunded mandate and all these other new regulations that y'all put in place. And so it's that casting stones and not knowing where those stones intersect, how they can affect other people. And I think that plays into the empathy gap too. A lot of
Yeah.
people aren't prepared to look at things from other people's perspectives. And I think that actually is something endemic in this country.
To not put yourself in anyone else's shoes except for your own.
Right.
No,
And
right. And then, hold on. They have, again, I live on a military
okay.
base thing and they got some weird stuff going on here. But, but yeah, that the lack of empathy that we have for people, you know what I'm saying, it's pretty sad in general. And I mean, but at the same time, like I've always tell people, and I told cops too, like I would not want your job.
Right.
I wouldn't. Like, dude, the stuff that y'all see on a consistent basis, I'm good.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, and people hate you. Like, it's not. And it's a. Here's the. I mean, like, I think that people hate the IRS probably more than they hate cops. But again, hold on. Are you hearing that?
I'm not hearing anything on my end.
Oh, okay, cool then. But like, yeah, no, I see why people hate them. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's kind of like that lack of compassion.
Right.
Sometimes that shit don't matter. Sometimes, I mean, sometimes the actions of one spoil the fruit of many.
Right.
Because I saw one cop do XYZ, or, I also remember watching something on TV when they were talking about Baltimore and the police officers in Baltimore. This dude was serving like, I think, like 10 years. And he kept saying that the police planted these drugs in his house
Hmm.
and all kinds of stuff, but nobody believed him because their word superseded his own.
Hmm.
And they're like, why would somebody who swore to protect you do you like that? They're not going to do that. And so we automatically assume, kind of like Stanley Milgram's obedience to authority.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Where the Nazis during the Nuremberg trials kept saying we did this because we were ordered to. And everybody in the Western Hemisphere is like, really? You committed mass murder because somebody told you to?
Yeah.
Nobody could just do that. And Stanley Milgram was like, let me see if you would do that. And he got people to do horrific things to people just because they were wearing a white coat.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? He got people to do horrible things to their fellow men because somebody in a white coat told them to. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
So if somebody in a badge is telling you, yeah, I saw him do XYZ, he's already been in jail for drugs, for guns, for this, for that already.
Hmm.
So the likelihood of him doing this too falls right into the scope of all the other stuff that you've been doing. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And because his record preceded him, whatever those cops threw on him, unfortunately stuck. And then they're like, well, why would you plead guilty for something you didn't do? Because if I don't plead guilty on this, then you got to go to trial. And
Yep.
if you go to trial, you're going to be in jail for the rest of your life.
Right.
At least with this, you could be out in 4 or 5 years and on probation for the rest. So it's literally damned if you do, damned if you don't.
The show kind of comes into account. We can talk about accountability, but here's another one I want to throw at you. So there's this old psychological study, and I am paraphrasing. Forgive me, y'all. I'm paraphrasing a lot here. But basically, they took two groups of boys. They put them at a camp. Okay. They split the boys up. The boys had no knowledge of the other group of boys there. And then slowly, the scientists in charge of this study would allow the kids to stumble upon evidence that there was another group of kids there. And so what happens is there was this internal competition, and they let the kids discover the other tribe, right? And they started arranging baseball games against each other and tug of wars against each other. Well, what happened was it turned a little bit more violent, and they had to stop it before the boys killed each other because it's the concept of, yeah, these boys are all from the same background. They made sure they are all from the same socioeconomic background, even ethnic background. So there was no otherness aside from the fact that the boys were already sectioned into these groups. But the boys started hating each other because they were others. Does that make sense?
Mm,
They
yep.
hated that group over there just because they're others. There was another one, which is a different experiment, but it goes into what you're talking about with the guys in white coats, where they took a bunch of college students, made some wardens and some prisoners, and conducted an experiment. And within a couple of days, they had to stop the experiment before somebody really got hurt because the wardens were liberally punishing the prisoner group, to the point where people were getting beaten. There was there's some other stuff which I won't go into here that happened, some jailhouse stuff, and they ended up having to stop it before people got hurt. One of the things is, whenever you take a group of people and say you are special, you're unique, you have special authority to do X, Y, and Z, you have to intensely monitor that group to make sure that when they interact with the rest of the public, they don't try to subjugate the rest of the public. And I think that's one of the conversations that needs to happen when we're talking about community policing and interacting with law enforcement a lot of times, because you hear about the sheriff gang in California where it's literally a police department sanctioned gang. The movie Training Day with Denzel was actually based on some real life stuff that happened with the LAPD, with that Rampart unit and the stuff
Hmm.
they were doing to people. They were actually moving like a gang as police officers, but doing gang stuff to people and hurting people. And
Yeah.
anytime you have an in group and an out group, you have to monitor the in group to make sure that they're not liberally punishing the out group. It happens specifically in some sections of law enforcement that we don't really want to talk about because in all other aspects, they're normal members of society that interact with us, and they're your football coach, and they volunteer in other aspects of life. But there's also you have to monitor to make sure that just because they are in this specific group doesn't automatically mean that they are about justice. Sometimes it's about power. It's like the kid. You remember being a kid and you had that one kid that you never wanted to be in charge of the classroom when the teacher was gone. Like he or she thrived in that hall monitor role, that that punitive role. They enjoyed it just because they had power over somebody. It wasn't because they were volunteering to be a good citizen. It was having power over somebody. You have to monitor that in all aspects of it. And I know this from running residential facilities. I pulled one of my workers aside and told him straight up, "You cannot do this jailhouse prison shit in my shelter with these kids.
Hmm.
It will not work here." I pulled him aside and tell him that. Said the stuff that you used to do as a prison guard does not fly here.
Right.
And I told him that, and he instantly knew what I was talking about, which was crazy. But I seen enough. I think we need to discuss in group and out groups too. So there is a deeper conversation.
No, I totally understand that. There's a book we should probably put up here somewhere called The Lucifer Effect by Philip Zimbardo.
Okay.
He's the one who did the Stanford prison experiment.
Yep, that's the one I was talking about.
Is that what you're talking about?
Talking about.
Yeah, no, that, yes, no. So I read that whole entire book. In that book is based on one word and one word only. Let me rephrase that, two words: zero accountability.
Hmm.
That's what that book was based on. That's what Abu Ghraib, when our soldiers was doing all that stuff to them dudes in Iraq and Afghanistan, making them take compromising pictures and having them doing weird gay stuff or
Yeah.
whatever. They called Philip Zimbardo to come in and talk about his book. And the one thing that he talked about was zero accountability. Cops are going to do what their superiors allow them to do.
Right.
Thank you. How good people turn evil. And it's based on how ordinary, everyday, regular people can start doing some pretty inhumane things to their fellow people
Right.
because they start to feel that, right, you're not a you're an animal. You know what I'm saying? I mean, if you're gang banging, you're not a crip, you're a crab, you're a red kid.
Hmm.
You know, if you're a blood, you're a slob, you're this, that, and the other. So you have to dehumanize a person.
Right.
I mean, so you're not just a man, you're an inmate. You're not an inmate, you're a number. My name is Officer Jones. Your name is 681234.
Hmm.
That's your name. You know what I mean? So you don't have a name, you have a number. And once, like you just said, that us versus them, then you get that whole thing of Blue Lives Matter.
Hmm.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like, then that's when you get that, where all lives matter.
Hmm.
Like, really, that's almost like saying that, like a person having testicular cancer, and then you getting mad that they're not talking about all
All
cancers.
cancers. Yeah.
Well, all cancer is bad.
Hmm.
Like, well, where's your sign up for all cancer? You know, my mom died of pancreatic cancer, but what about the people who died from lung cancer? What about throat cancer? What about eye cancer? Right?
Right.
Yeah.
It's
So
the
you
use
don't
of
have,
you know
yeah, you have,
Vietnam. It's the dehumanization. Once you start using slurs, and replace those slurs with actual people, or replace the individuals with actual slurs as a group, it makes it easier to commit atrocities against those slurs.
Right.
Yes, with that.
So if that whoever this Vietnamese lady is, if you start calling her Mrs. Wan or Mrs. Chang, you probably ain't gonna shoot the woman
Mm-hmm.
because there's a name to her.
Mm-hmm.
This is the same woman who, if given a chance, if your children were here, she'd watch your kids while you went to work type stuff.
Right.
So no, why would I want to hurt Miss Chang
Right.
or Miss Wynn? Why would I do that to that woman?
Yeah.
If we just called them boards or bottles,
Mm-hmm.
oh, you're not a human at that point anymore.
Right.
When it's us versus you, that means that you are the enemy.
Well,
We're
and
the
then
good guy and you're the bad guy.
exactly. And see, when you're in the in group, there's anonymity that comes with being that group, which is crazy. Right. Right. I remember the comic nerd coming out at me with was a Batman, The Dark Knight Rises, where Bane came out and said nobody cared who I was until I put on the mask.
So I put on a mask.
Yeah, he was
Right,
more
but hold on.
he put on the mask and separated himself, and now everybody
Mhm.
wants to know who he is. It's crazy.
Right. But you also got to remember, too, what else did he say in that line? Because that's literally, again, one of my favorite movies.
Yeah,
And he said, but that only works for the uninitiated.
uninitiated.
But you and I are initiated, aren't we,
Yeah,
Bruce? Say, that's don't work with me because I know what you're doing.
right.
Doesn't work. You can fool them, but you don't fool me. I see what you're doing.
I saw somebody on Twitter was talking about, and they said Bane was dropping bars in that movie, bar
Yes,
after bar,
he
bar.
was. Yes, he was. Joker is a fucking psychopath in general.
Yeah,
Bane was not. He was very methodical in what he was doing, but why he was doing it.
right.
Even when the homeboy at the end, not at the end, when that dude walked up to him and said, "We paid you a lot of money for this and the other." What did he say to him? And that was actually it.
Yeah,
But what did he say to him? Like, so you think because you give me money that allows you to talk to me any kind of way? That
I almost
that
quit a job on the strength of that bar.
that makes you feel that you're somehow better than me?
Mhm.
And then we all know what happened to him right afterwards. But again, though, it's that us versus them. And the
Right.
thing, even with that, I love how you tied that into this. Bane was willing to sacrifice himself for the greater good.
Yeah.
He himself was willing to go ahead and go right along with them.
Right.
And that's what I've always liked, at least about the Bane character that they created for the Dark Knight.
Right.
Now, his origin and all that stuff, don't know. But all I'm saying is that I understood where he was coming from.
Right.
Like I totally got it. I
And
totally understood it.
well, and the thing was, and I got to get moving here. I think that bar, that specific. Do you feel? I almost quit a job after seeing that. Like that bar hit me so hard, I almost walked in and quit. Looked my supervisor in the face and like, you know what? I quit just because you paying me all this money. You think that gives you power over me? I'm like, Bane, I'm out. I had to stop myself because I'm like, well, what am I going to do after that point? But that hit me like because it even the subtle placement of the hand on the cheek and on the shoulder, he let that man know, like, hey, everything that you think is power and control, if it's tied to money, it's imaginary.
Imaginary. So that's oh my god, I gotta write that down. And you know what's so funny is one of the principles that I teach is everything you own can fit inside of an imaginary bag.
Yeah,
Everything you own can fit inside of an imaginary bag. All of it. The things that you technically own that cannot be taken away from you is your character, your integrity, your attitude, and your choices.
Right.
Your thoughts are yours. What comes out your mouth is yours. What goes into your mind, that's not. Right? A man once said that I can't prevent a bird from flying over my head, but I can prevent it from making a nest in my hair. Again, it doesn't matter what happens within or to us. What matters is what happens within. And while I was sitting in that jail cell, you know what I was doing?
What?
I was thinking about the books. I was thinking about my grocery list. You know what I'm saying? I had all these ideas, and then I just kind of sat back, put my head back, closed my eyes, and just let my mind just go wherever it needed to go. That's what I did.
Right.
You know what I mean? But yeah, I love that money. And so yeah, so kind of like we were just talking about the idea that because they have more money than you, they are in power.
Yeah.
And it's because you gave it to them. You allowed them to have it. If
Right.
I burned your wealth tomorrow and we both start at zero, now who's better than who?
Right.
If everybody were to become millionaires like people have been talking about, then the dollar will lose its value.
Right.
And if the dollar itself loses its value, guess what? The shit doesn't matter anymore.
Right.
Then we'll have to adopt a brand new system.
Well, I'm gonna throw this at you too. So imagine you the only billionaire sitting up on top of the hill, and you surrounded by people that are 10 heirs and 100 heirs. How safe are you?
What do you mean?
You're the only billionaire. You sitting up on the hill in your village or enclave or whatever. You surrounded by people that have $10 to $100 in their name. Is that $1 billion protecting you? Is all that money and all those resources going to protect you if they decide, you know what? They have something in that house that we could all use. We could feed everybody in the house. And all we gotta do is just go and take it.
Yep. Well, you gotta go ahead.
I look at it like you have the skills. And that's what this is the concept I have with the fake alpha male stuff that we talk about now, where the alpha male theory has been debunked for years and years, but people talk about it with humans. A lot of the people that are considered alphas in society are people that got, I'm a billionaire, I'm a millionaire, blah, 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 blah. And that makes me an alpha. Well, can you fight? Can you can you fire a firearm? If tomorrow you had to go out and raise your own crops, could you do that? Could you hunt for your own food? Can you repair your own car? Can you do all this other stuff that self-sufficient people had to learn how to do back in the days? And we'll start with just, can you fight? Can you defend yourself? Well, a lot of the alpha males that I see out there can't, you know? And so, can you really be an alpha male if you can't defend yourself in your home from some other alpha male that's trying to gain access to it? No, but they're alpha based on the fact of resources and money only, and no other attributes, nothing else, no other skills or abilities or talents. And so that's what I'm talking about with this weird wave of where money has given people weird levels of authority and stuff, and they think that and it comes with a polite society and the social, the social contract and stuff like that. But a lot of these guys are advocating, well, are doomers, and they're waiting for the collapse of society and all this stuff. That money is not going to mean anything. Like you were saying, if all goes away tomorrow, that money's really not going to mean anything. Ain't nobody getting up in the apocalypse to go to the bank job.
Right.
It's not about how much you have, it's how much you can physically prevent people from taking from you.
Right.
A lot of people are in charge just because, and we've seen it, in our different roles and things that we've experienced in our life. You've met plenty of people that are simply in charge just because They may not have the skills or whatnot, but they're there and they have the respect and everything that comes along with it. But you remove any aspect of the thing that gives them power, and they wouldn't rise to the top under their own abilities. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So that's what I think, that a
Yeah.
lot of times people look at it like, money and power are hand in hand. Yeah, money can buy power, but money can be taken too.
Um, years, a long time ago, a gentleman by the name of Pablo Escobar, he was a Colombian
Mhm.
drug lord, right? Was reported to have burned over $2 million for his daughter and his family to stay warm while he was on the run. $2 million he used to burn.
Mhm.
So the same thing that excuse me, the thing that you're just discussing is literally that. At the end of the day, it's firewood.
Mhm.
That's what you're fighting these people over. That's what you're going to work for. It's
Right.
firewood. It's fire paper. Because at the end of the day, if you have 5 point some $1 million and you're in a house and you got some lighter fluid and you got a lighter and you can't leave because it's too cold outside, what are you going to do?
Right.
Especially your daughter, your family, you do whatever, or you'll
Right.
freeze to death and then you'll have nothing.
It don't matter.
Yeah, you know what I mean? So, no, I totally understand what you're saying in that because at the end, that same, you said that you almost quit a job
Mhm.
because of the whole Bain thing
Mhm.
of when he said, "Well, just because you pay me." The reason why I became an entrepreneur, one event, my I had to take my son to a doctor's appointment. And I remember one day I went into work and I had to ask permission to my supervisor so I could take my son to a doctor's appointment. I've been homeless. I have slept on my friend's couch for years. I have been without. I've lost everything
Mhm.
to multiple times. I have to start over again. I have never in my life felt more humiliated as a man than having to ask somebody if I could take my son to a doctor's appointment. I don't know what it was about her response or just me having to ask somebody else for me to do this small thing for my son. I said never again.
Yeah.
I remember that day I went home and I wrote a goal for myself to make $10,000 a month. I didn't give a shit how I was going to do it. I had no idea. I went home and I wrote it down. I want to make, and I also wrote the 5 things that I wanted in life that if I couldn't have these 5 things, it wasn't even worth living. And I decided to live my life based on those 5 concepts, and I never looked back. Never. So I took what you said,
Mhm.
but you stayed. I took that shit and I was done. That was it for me. And I had already lost everything before, so wasn't that hard to do it again.
Right.
You know what I mean? But like, yeah, so we can go into the psychology of that, the the theory of it, and the practicality of that as well.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, so because I know you gotta go,
Yeah.
so do I. But yeah, do you have any final thoughts?
I think that goes into the larger piece of not just accountability for outcomes, but accountability for actions, right? Because that falls in.
Mm,
Within 3 years, I had started my own business after that point. And so it was a longer path for me. I also do think there's a Kendrick and Drake analogy that falls in somewhere here. We talk about money and resources and stuff.
what do you say?
How,
I was just thinking about that today. What do you say? You say you're not a colleague, you're a colonizer. I
well,
was like, boy.
and
Whew.
even with the new Kendrick, the GNX stuff, where he's openly like burning bridges and stuff like that, and basically talking about what his philosophy is. He went against the biggest artist on the planet, biggest rap artist, well, biggest artist. So Kendrick was just like, all right, well, I'm gonna go ahead and end this. And now Drake is suing his record label because he thinks that they colluded with Kendrick and all this other stuff. And what it's gonna
Seriously.
expose is, yeah, that's all. It's on the new. This is real current shit right now. He's suing Universal Music Group for saying that they colluded with Kendrick, and Universal Music Group's like basically came back and said, "Hey man, this dude punched you in the face. Why didn't you punch him back? Why are you suing us? We're going with what the people said."
All
And
right, we ain't got nothing to do with this. This
they're
is
using
you.
the fact that Drake is using the fact that basically what happened was Kendrick, when he dropped that rash of disses, what he did was he took off um, the ownership, the rights to it, so that all the YouTubers and stuff can monetize videos off of it and make content. And that was kind of this organic thing that just
They
exploded
pushed
all
that
over the internet and took over
everywhere.
Google, took over the Google listings, took over Twitter and everywhere else organically by not penalizing people for reviewing the music, because that's normally what happens on Google. He just took all of that off there. And so Drake's kind of trying to use that, saying, well, he colluded and used artificial means. Well, it was still organic. But basically, he's saying that he's suing UMG and I think Spotify. And Kendrick just showed you how to take down somebody who has more money and resources and supports, because this is what happens when you have everything to lose and you go up against somebody who really doesn't have anything to lose. Kendrick has nothing to lose. His fans fuck with him regardless.
Yep.
Drake had everything to lose. He had persona and respect and stuff like that. And now he's getting drug all over the four corners of the music internet for also you lost the battle and so you filed a lawsuit. That's what's happening now.
Okay.
That accountabilities for actions and outcomes. So I think that could be a good topic. Let me put a little bit of thought behind where we can go, and I'm gonna send the links to you when I get back.
I need to be able to build more into this accountability thing anyway. So yeah, I love that.
So
Theory versus actions versus outcome. I,
right. So all
but
right,
yeah,
man.
all right, though, my guy, man, get home or go pick up the kiddos. So we are good.
Cool.
But yeah, though, man, we'll chop it up next. Send this to me though, bro.
I'll send it over. Let me go ahead and run, and I'll be back to send it over.
All right, send me the other ones too, man, so we can
Yep.
start chopping them out.
Oh
And
yeah.
get them out. Our stuff is too good, man.
All right. I'll make sure I prioritize getting that over to you.
Please do, sir.
All right.
All right, my guy.
Peace.
All right, y'all.